Uh, Three, two, one. Hello, welcome to New York Truck Stop Video. I'm Zach Miller, the publisher of NewYorkTruckStop.com and co-host of New York Truck Stop Radio, Saturdays at 1 p.m. on AM 970 The Answer and AM 570 The Mission.
And I'm Arthur Miller. So thank you for joining us. This is the second of our broadcasts or video casts in the age of coronavirus. So
yes, make sure you get the phrasing right.
We're learning as we go along, as is so much in life these days. It's a whole new world. But anyway, what I do, I'm an attorney and I work mostly with the transportation industry. Basically, I handle traffic tickets, parking tickets, all sorts of violations and regulatory matters. I deal with the DOT. So, but we also deal with small business issues. So, almost anybody that operates a truck is in a business in some way. So, that's one of the things we like to talk, not just about transportation issues, but issues involving commerce. And as we like to say, we're at the intersection of commerce and transportation. So everything is interconnected. So I think we have an interesting discussion today.
Yeah, it's been in the news a lot recently of the sort of the status and the potential future of the United States Postal Service. All reports seem to indicate that the USPS will run out of money by the fall. There's a lot to get into here, but the main things are to know that come the fall, with coronavirus, there is this really strong possibility that a majority of people in this country are going to vote through mail-in ballots. In addition, with coronavirus, so many more people, and we talked about this a little bit last week, the shift between business-to-business demand to business-to-consumer demand. So more and more people need to get whatever it is they need to get delivered to their homes instead of going out to stores to get it. And, both those mail-in ballots, supplying people, the post office plays an integral role in that, particularly in terms of package delivery in more rural, less densely populated areas where it's not exactly profitable for the private carriers like your UPS or your FedEx to deliver to. So, the post office, obviously for the history of this country, played an integral role in what made America such a strong, vibrant country, but it still plays a very important role for so many people's lives. And that's not something that should be lost. Certainly there are changes that need to happen to the post office, and we'll get into that, but the basics of the post office must survive past the fall. It would be really devastating to this country if we lost the post office.
I mean, the post office at its essence is a bare minimum, just like
Mm-hmm.
we need to have an army and we need to have certain other things. I mean, the post office goes back, you really, Ben Franklin was the first postmaster general under the act of the Continental Congress, and they viewed the post office, the postal service, as a sort of great unifier. They were afraid, the framers were afraid of censorship by letting any one individual leader being able to control who gets information. They even, if you look into the history, they even gave a discount to newspapers. Why? So that information could get to the furthest flung reaches of the colonies. And that original Enabling Act from 1792, that decreed that the post offices should be available in every community, whether large or small, or rural or urban. So, these were the things that, really sort of united the country, made the country grow, gave opportunities for business, opportunity for the sharing of ideas, opportunities to educate the people. Now jump forward to where we are. There are certain other opportunities, but guess what? Not everybody has all of those opportunities.
Yep.
So, we certainly salute the development of the newer services, different package delivery services that were new when they started, and newer services that started, and then of course the internet and all. But who can't say, even in these days, right now, when we're practicing social isolation, you still wait to see what comes in the mailbox every day.
You do. I actually haven't checked my mailbox in a while.
There you go.
But
All
no,
right,
but
so you.
well, it's actually interesting though, because before COVID, I live right by a post office. So on my, in normal times, my commute, I would walk past the post office. And for the last, I would say about 6 to 8 months before everything started shutting down, there were lots of new vans, private vans that the post office had to contract with, just because there was so much e-commerce demand for them that they had to contract out to private companies. So even in this, one of the largest urban areas in the country, in the world, there's still a need for the post office. So certainly, multiply that tenfold for the rural areas, and we see how vital it is. But it is important to talk about some of these numbers because they're significant. The post office is what I think you have the numbers, but it's what, 22. They're looking at 22 billion in losses over the next 18 months.
Here's the thing: that the Postmaster General on Friday, the 10th, issued a statement saying that they really need help badly. That they're on track to 22 billion in losses over the next 18 months, and if they don't do anything, that can mushroom to 54 billion over time. And what's scary is a large, humongous portion of that is that they're under this special rule that was passed in 2006, saying that they have to fund their pension liabilities up front. Most other businesses and certainly other government agencies, they don't have to put their pension money in the bank in advance of people needing it. And the Postal Accountability Enforcement Act of 2006 required them to fund 75 years of pension responsibilities, basically up front.
It's unbelievable.
I don't think there are many postal workers that they anticipated who were working in 2016 are going to be still working after 75 years. So I mean, it was, and a lot has changed since then. So that's a huge, huge issue. So that's something. And just to put that in perspective, I saw a figure. They said of the between 2007 and 2016, the post office had a total of $62.4 billion in losses. Of that, $54.8 billion was the funding of the pension. So they had to put $54.8 billion away that they didn't have. So that's like buying a house and having to put all your mortgage money aside, even though you have the mortgage. So it doesn't make much sense.
No, and let me just say also, so in 2019, their revenue was about $71 billion, and their bread and butter, which is first class mail, has decreased about 50% in the last 20 years, from a high of about 103 billion pieces to about 54 billion in 2019. So clearly, they need to be able to straighten out this pension situation, and clearly they need to find a new bread and butter source of revenue, or else there is no future there. But those are workable issues. I guess let's sort of start with the pension plan, because one idea is, in terms of the healthcare portion, is to shift it to Medicare, which I think is a pretty decent idea, especially because, look, we don't we don't know what's going to happen in the election. We don't know how COVID is going to shake out, but there does seem to at least be more and more of a push for people to say, hey, there should be a government option for healthcare. Now, I don't want to go off the rails and talk about healthcare policy on this episode, but the notion of shifting people to Medicare, the notion of shifting people to some sort of public option is not as controversial as it would have been in, say, 2006.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some merit to that. I mean, look, there are other government entities that provide, healthcare. So, maybe it should be more fair, and
Yeah,
that may make it more
and
affordable in
that
that way.
and all of a sudden that then the post office can continue to provide the services that it needs to provide to the people who need it. I mean, it's a balancing act here. How do you properly service the people who need you, and how do you take care of your employees who make the system work? This is
Right.
something that private companies have to deal with this. The government has to deal with this, and this is sort of, we need to figure out how to do that for the post service, and just the healthcare cost is a big one.
The other thing too is, I think first we have to, as a nation, sort of agree that we need the institution of the post office, no matter what. I mean, some
Right.
would say let's let private industry do it. Okay, that's private industry can run things a certain way, but the post office, as I said, with the requirements that it be in all communities and basically serve all comers and even have the lower priced options, basically, and certainly not, I mean, no disrespect to to our friends at the private package and other delivery firms, but they cherry pick the profitable aspects, and they're making
Right.
profits for their shareholders, and so left with the dregs is the private the quasi government entity. So that needs to be preserved, because in
Right.
times of crisis, you need to have this sort of basic floor there. And in other words, if you've got a building and you're worried about security, you can hire a security agent to watch the building. But if God forbid it, there are bigger problems, you're going to call the fire department, you're going to call the local police. So you need to have that basic infrastructure, and we need to protect it. We can't just let it go away, because otherwise communities and segments of the population will be just cut off, which is not a healthy thing. Which leads back to one area I had always talked about, which I thought would be a good idea. And some countries, I think, do it, is that originally the internet and communications were sort of under the control of their postal services. So I thought if there was a sort of low-level internet that would be available throughout the country, anywhere, basically for free, and they could fund it by ads and have the post office get a piece of that, that might generate some revenue. So in other words, like certain other aspects of, if you want better service, you could pay a private service. But if you want free, there's something out there for you, and let the post office get a piece of handling commercials or things like that. That was my idea.
And I don't know if that's exactly the funding mechanism through ads, but certainly combining it as a utility, I think, is a really good idea, especially when you consider back to the rural areas that don't have great internet access. They sort of get doubly hit, right? Because it's more difficult for them to access the online marketplace, and then it's more difficult for them to receive deliveries there because it's not really so profitable. So by sort of bundling the postal service with internet access, you sort of solve or help to solve two major problems in these rural, less densely populated areas. So, just from that idea alone, it's worth exploring, especially, and, now we're moving to 5G here in more populated areas, and, they could barely get the 4G access there. It's just, the problems are just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. So this is a way to really attack two problems, two birds with one stone type of thing.
Right. Which segues to another idea that we saw online and it was kicking around a little, was that it was to create some sort of banking option. And, we talk about rural versus urban, but there are also, like in the past, you've had the discussion about food deserts, where in poorer sections of urban areas where there's not enough fresh food going around, but there are also problems with not enough banks in poorer areas. So if you have the post offices being able to serve some kind of basic banking function, and when you think about it, they sell money orders.
Yep.
So there are some other functions. It's not a heavy lift.
No, not at all. And again, that's another problem that COVID has highlighted, is all these people who don't have bank accounts. And well, how do, because there's an issue with stimulus money, how do we get them the money if they don't have bank accounts? But the general point is, if there was a way for them to open up bank accounts, through the post office, there's another service the post office could provide, another source of income, another sort of business model for them. And again, there are, so that's one revenue stream. There also does need to be another cut, which is mandatory Saturday deliveries. Certainly in the age of email and, electronic communication, the notion of 6-day snail mail delivery is probably incredibly inefficient. Now, granted, Amazon is still going to demand packages, that the post office deliver Amazon packages 6 days a week. But again, that's one contractor. Not every single piece of mail requires 6 days a week. So definitely cutting back
but that
Saturdays.
gets back to Zach. You're talking about the package deliveries. If you're going to buy something, shipping is either included in the cost, or you pay up front for the ability to get it shipped to you.
Right.
But the
exactly.
basic privilege, and you need a very reduced rate, is that somebody who doesn't have enough money, if they want to send a letter or something to somebody, they get whatever the base rate is at whatever the longest service is. I mean, at the very least, the post office always has to provide that. The private shippers do not have to have a low level service necessarily. I mean, some will have 2-day and longer shipment times, but
right.
But again, it's not going to be the average walk-in that at the bare minimum can send a letter to somebody.
Yeah, exactly. There's also the big thing. Well, one of the big things is the post office has to have a ton of land. I mean, they're just their supply chain.
Right. There's
in
a lot
and of itself,
freestanding buildings around.
It's an incredible asset, and we live again with e-commerce, with urban density. We live in a system that is starving for improvements for last mile delivery. So I see no reason why the post office can't better utilize their assets to service last mile and generate a profitable division there.
Or help to develop some of their properties. So in other words, if you
Right.
have a freestanding building, now obviously some of them are architectural landmarks and should be, but there are some places where they've got property. So either they could sell some of the development rights to a neighboring property to get developed, or work in tandem, helping to put up affordable housing or something like that. That could be some sort of put some money in the coffers. So there are things like that can be done.
Yeah. So I mean, it's and this is just just a couple of ideas that have either been floated or that we came up with off the top of our heads. it's it's just sort of disheartening where leadership can only either talk about, oh, they need a bailout or nothing, instead of coming up with real solutions. Some difficult, some difficult cuts for sure, but also some creative solutions to save an institution that this country needs, that this country still needs.
And on some level, really, the delivering of stuff. I mean, actually, delivering of mail was a monopoly. When it
Yes.
went to packages, I mean, people always could, have packages elsewhere. So, it's a question of, whether that right didn't necessarily belong to the Postal Service, but they're just different standards, and the everything has to be on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Whether there's a tax on the shipment of things. I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but we've heard some politicians in the pre-pandemic era, which started only a couple of weeks ago, but they were saying that maybe they should charge like a tax based on each shipment, like 50-cent tax on a box or something. With, and our, like I said, our friends in the package delivery businesses, we're obviously concerned, and I think it's kind of unmanageable. But maybe there is
That's
to be a
tough.
special, maybe there is to be a special tax on shipments of all kinds. And when you think of this, the rushing to, free delivery, the world at your doorstep, when you don't have to pay anything for that delivery, that adds to it. It contributes to some of the problems with, the excess, the vehicles on the road and pollution and parking or whatever. I mean, if you have many different services coming to serve one building, that adds to traffic. And maybe there should be some kind of tax. I don't know if it's per item. I don't know how that works, but just something. It's going to be, especially as we get through this coronavirus situation. The governments of all branches of all the governments are going to be looking for new revenue streams, and
Yeah.
to beef up the income. So these are things that maybe have to be done, and we have to take a strong stance in what needs to be preserved,
Yeah.
like the Postal Service, and where will revenue come to make things whole. We were on a conference call today. What are they saying? New York State. Today is the
Today is the 14th. We're
14th
recording on the 14th
of April,
of
and
April. Yeah.
they were saying that they're predicting the budgetary hit to this New York State budget to be about 10 billion with a B.
Right now it's at 10 billion.
Right.
And that's sort of they didn't say it. They have their internal projections about when they could start opening things back up. They can't say it publicly yet for so many reasons. But I think it's 10 billion based on the best of their internal projections. If things don't go that way, you're looking at closer to 15 billion and north of that. So yes, the budget holes are significant.
Oh, absolutely.
Without a doubt.
So before we wrap up, though, I want to make sure we do a shout out. The Postal Service has 630,000 employees, and so obviously the Postal Service and then the private services also, particularly in this time of pandemic, the I don't know, millions, I don't know what kind of number of packages, envelopes, everything that's being handled, and that they're doing this and they're coming in. They are essential, and
Mm-hmm.
we all owe them a debt of gratitude, and from the people that maintain the facilities to the tellers, to the ones who work in the shipping rooms, to the ones who actually deliver and put it in the mailbox or leave a package at your door. They deserve our deepest gratitude, and we wish them all to be safe and healthy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just lastly, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, any suggestions that maybe we didn't think about, any topics you want us to cover in a future video, please send us an email at Zach, Z-A-C-H, at newyorktruckstop.com, Arthur at newyorktruckstop.com. You could give us a call, 718-997-0641. Be sure to tune in to either AM 970 or AM 570, Saturdays at 1. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. Be well, everybody.
Stay safe.